The alert siren woke Jack Harper from a dreamless sleep. He fumbled for the communication panel beside his bed as the blue emergency lights cast strange shadows across his quarters. "Commander Harper," he answered, his voice still rough from sleep. "Sir, the Galactic Council has summoned you. The message is marked urgent," said Communications Officer Kelly West. "They're demanding your presence within 2 hours." Jack sat up, suddenly wide awake. "Did they say why?" "No, sir, but the transmission tone was formal diplomatic protocol level 5. Jack whistled softly. Level 5 meant trouble. Big trouble. Inform. "Them, I'll be there." "And Kelly? Wake up senior staff. I want them in the briefing room in 15 minutes. After a quick shower, Jack stood before the mirror in his quarters, adjusting the collar of his formal uniform. At 42, his face showed the strain of 5 years as humanity's lead representative to the Galactic Council. The job had added streaks of gray to his dark hair and etched permanent lines around his eyes. He touched the United Earth emblem on his chest, a simple blue sphere with white stars representing human colonies in the solar system. It was a modest symbol compared to the elaborate crests of the older council races, some of whom had been spacefaring for thousands of years. In the briefing room, 5 tired faces looked up as Jack entered. His senior diplomatic team had served with him since Earth was grudgingly granted observer status in the Council 3 years ago. "Something's happened," Jack said without preamble. "The Council doesn't call emergency sessions for good news." Diana Winters, his chief diplomatic officer, looked up from her data tablet. "The Proxima incident?" Jack nodded grimly. "Most likely." Peter Novak, security liaison, leaned forward. "We were defending our mining operation from Proximan slavers. Every bit of evidence proves it. Evidence the Council has chosen to ignore twice now," Jack reminded him. "They've made it clear they consider human expansion into the Proxima system as aggressive encroachment." Susan Rodriguez, cultural specialist, shook her head. "The Proximans have 3 council members as trade partners. We have none. Politics beats truth every time." The briefing was short. There wasn't much to say. In the 3 years since humanity had been allowed limited participation in galactic affairs, they'd faced constant resistance from the older species. Humans were seen as newcomers, unpredictable and dangerous. The recent skirmish at the Proxima mining colony, where human security forces had killed 12 Proximan raiders attempting to kidnap workers, had escalated tensions dramatically. 2 hours later, Jack stood at the entrance to the council chamber on Centauri Station. The massive space habitat served as neutral ground for the 17 spacefaring civilizations that comprised the Galactic Council. Jack's small shuttle had docked at the human bay, the smallest and farthest from the central hub. The 20-minute walk through increasingly luxurious sectors served as a reminder of humanity's place in the galactic hierarchy. The council chamber itself was designed to intimidate. Jack stood in the center on a small circular platform, while tiered seating rose around him in a full 360 degrees. Each delegation had its own section, decorated with their species' colors and symbols. The human section, barely large enough for 3 representatives, was empty today. This was not a normal session. High Counselor Zyrtak of the Vesperi Collective rose from the central podium. His insectoid form, nearly 3 meters tall, gleamed under the chamber lights. Multiple arms moved in the precise gestures that accompanied formal Vesperi speech. "Commander Jack Harper of Earth, you have been summoned to receive the Council's judgment regarding the Proxima incident and other accumulated concerns about human behavior in galactic affairs." Jack kept his face neutral, despite the unfairness of the wording. A judgment meant the Council had already made its decision. This wasn't a hearing. It was a sentencing. For the next hour, representatives from 12 species took turns listing grievances against humanity. Some were legitimate, concerns about human unpredictability. Others were thinly veiled expressions of xenophobia or economic competition. The Proximans, with their pale blue skin and 4 eyes, seemed particularly eager to portray humans as violent primitives who had murdered innocent traders. Jack was allowed to speak only once, for exactly 5 minutes. He presented the evidence of the Proximan raid, including sensor logs showing the raiders had fired first and communication logs proving they had announced their intent to take specimens. His words seemed to vanish into the vast chamber without effect. The council representatives watched with expressions ranging from boredom to open hostility. Finally, Zyrtok raised all 4 of his primary limbs for silence. The council has deliberated and reached unanimous consensus, the Vesperi announced. Humanity has demonstrated itself to be dangerously unpredictable, culturally incompatible with galactic norms, and unwilling to accept the guidance of more advanced civilizations. Jack felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. Therefore, by the authority granted under the Treaty of 17 Stars, the Galactic Council hereby revokes Earth's observer status and imposes a full quarantine on the human species. Murmurs of approval rippled through the chamber. All human vessels will return to the Sol system within 30 standard days. The Council will establish monitoring stations at the system boundaries. Any human ship attempting to leave will be disabled or destroyed. This quarantine will remain in effect for no less than 500 galactic cycles. Jack couldn't keep the shock from his face. 500 galactic cycles was over 2,000 Earth years. This is not a temporary measure, Commander Harper, Zyrtok continued, his compound eyes gleaming. This is the consensus of all advanced species. Humans are not ready for galactic society, and will not be for many generations. Perhaps your distant descendants will have evolved beyond your primitive aggressive tendencies. Jack stepped forward. The Council has no right. The Council has every right, interrupted the Proximan delegate, all 4 eyes blinking in satisfaction. Your species was allowed provisional contact too early, before you had time to mature properly. This is a correction of that mistake. 2 Council security officers approached the platform. Their exoskeletons clicked as they motioned for Jack to follow them. You have 12 hours to collect your diplomatic staff and depart Centauri Station, one stated flatly. Your access to all Council communication networks will be revoked upon your departure. As they escorted him from the chamber, Jack's mind raced through the implications. Earth had begun to depend on Council technology and trade, particularly for certain rare elements needed for advanced computing systems. A sudden cutoff would cause economic chaos. But beneath his diplomatic calm, a spark of anger began to grow. The Council had never treated humans as equals. Every concession had come with restrictions. Every technology shared had been outdated or limited. In the shuttle back to the human embassy section, Jack stared out at the gleaming spires of Centauri Station. The Council thought they were containing a threat, ensuring their continued dominance of the galaxy. They didn't understand humans at all. By the time Jack reached his office, he had already begun planning. The Council had made a critical error. They assumed humans would accept their fate, would obediently retreat to their small corner of the galaxy, and live under alien supervision. Jack opened a secure channel to Earth Central Command. "This is Commander Harper," he said, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "The Council has ordered complete quarantine of the Sol system. All human ships are to return home immediately." He paused, then added, "And inform the Science Directorate that Project Pathfinder is now our absolute priority. If the Council won't let us use their roads, we'll build our own. The path ahead would be difficult." But Jack knew one thing with absolute certainty. The story of humanity among the stars was just beginning, not ending. And someday the Council would regret the day they thought they could cage the human spirit. 10 years had passed since the Galactic Council banished humanity to the Sol system. Earth had changed. The loss of alien trade partners and technology had initially caused economic collapse and widespread panic. But humans proved more resilient than the Council expected. Dr. Olivia Martinez wiped sweat from her forehead as she studied the holographic display floating above the laboratory table. At 35, she had already become the leading quantum physicist on Earth, heading the secret Pathfinder project that Commander Harper, now Admiral Harper, had initiated the day of humanity's banishment. The laboratory was buried deep beneath the Atacama Desert in Chile, far from the Council monitoring stations that hovered at the edge of the solar system. The dry, clear air and remote location provided perfect conditions for the sensitive equipment needed for their work. "Run the simulation again," Olivia instructed her assistant, Frank Cooper. "Increase power to the quantum field generator by 12%. The hologram shifted, showing streams of particles flowing through an artificial wormhole. Previous simulations had resulted in collapse after just milliseconds. This time, the wormhole stabilized, its edges glowing a soft blue. "It's holding," Frank whispered, afraid to break her concentration. Olivia checked the data readings, her heart racing. 30 seconds. 1 minute. 2 minutes. She looked up, her eyes wide. "We did it. The quantum field is stable." Frank stared at the simulation in awe. "So the theory was right? The Council ships don't actually generate their faster-than-light fields? They just access naturally occurring wormholes?" Olivia nodded. "And they deliberately kept that knowledge from us. They made us believe FTL travel required technology thousands of years beyond our capabilities." She smiled. "But we don't need their permission to use physics." 3 days later, Olivia stood before the United Earth Defense Council in the underground headquarters beneath what had once been Geneva. Admiral Jack Harper sat at the center of the half-circle table, his hair now completely gray. Beside him sat representatives from every major region of Earth and the solar colonies on Mars, Venus, and the moons of Jupiter. "Dr. Martinez," Jack began, "your report claims you've discovered how the Council races achieve faster-than-light travel. Can you explain in terms we can all understand?" Olivia activated her presentation. A three-dimensional model of the galaxy appeared above the table. "The Council races don't actually use technology to travel faster than light, at least not in the way we thought," she explained. "They've mapped natural wormholes that exist throughout the galaxy. Their ships use quantum field generators to access these natural bridges between points in space. And they blocked our access to these maps," said the Asian Federation representative. "Yes, but that's not the important part," Olivia continued. "The critical discovery is that we don't need their maps. We can create artificial wormholes." The room fell silent. "Are you saying we can break the quarantine?" asked the Mars colony representative, leaning forward. "I'm saying we can bypass it entirely," Olivia replied. "The Council is watching the natural wormhole entrances near our system. They have no way to detect or block artificially created ones." Admiral Harper's face remained carefully neutral, but Olivia could see the spark in his eyes. "How soon can this technology be deployed? With proper funding and resources, we could have a prototype ready within 3 years. A fully functional ship within 5. The meeting lasted for hours as Olivia answered technical questions and addressed concerns about Council detection. When it finally ended, only Admiral Harper remained in the chamber with her. "You've done it, Olivia," he said, his formal manner dropping away. "You've found our way back to the stars." "We're not there yet," she cautioned. "The energy requirements are enormous. We'll need advances in fusion technology to power a ship-sized generator. You'll have everything you need," Jack promised. "Every resource Earth can provide." True to his word, the Pathfinder project received unlimited funding. Research facilities were established throughout the solar system, all disguised as mining, operations or weather stations to avoid Council suspicion. Scientists and engineers worked in shifts around the clock, driven by the shared goal of breaking humanity free from its cage. 4 years later, Olivia stood in a massive underground hangar, carved into the far side of the moon, completely hidden from both Earth and Council monitoring stations. Before her loomed the Pathfinder 1, humanity's first wormhole-capable starship. Unlike the elegant organic designs of Council vessels, Pathfinder 1 was angular and functional. Its center featured a massive ring, the artificial wormhole generator, surrounded by 4 fusion reactors. The ship wasn't pretty, but it represented humanity's greatest achievement. Admiral Harper joined her on the observation platform. At his side walked William Grant, the ship's commander and the man who would lead humanity's first secret venture beyond the quarantine. "It's smaller than I expected," William remarked. "We kept it minimal for the first test," Olivia explained. "Just enough room for your crew of 12 and the essential equipment. If you succeed, we'll build bigger ships." "When we succeed," William corrected with a confident smile. The launch was scheduled for 300 hours, when the moon would be positioned to provide maximum shielding from Council sensors. As the final preparations were made, Olivia joined William in the ship's control room. The coordinates are set for the Epsilon Eridani system, she told him. It's close enough for a first jump, but far enough that the Council doesn't monitor it regularly. There's a potentially habitable planet in the Goldilocks zone. William nodded. If it's viable, we'll establish the first outpost there. Remember, once you activate the wormhole generator, you'll have exactly 45 seconds to pass through before it collapses. The ship's systems will need 12 hours to recharge before you can generate another wormhole for the return journey. We've drilled it hundreds of times in the simulator, William assured her. We're ready. The countdown proceeded with tense efficiency. Olivia returned to the observation room, where Admiral Harper and the Defense Council waited. On screens, around the room they watched as Pathfinder 1 powered up its systems. Artificial wormhole generator at full charge, came the navigator's voice over the speakers. Coordinates locked. Field generation in 10 seconds. The room fell silent as everyone held their breath. 3, 2, 1, initiating. A swirling blue vortex appeared before the ship, expanding until it stabilized as a perfect ring of energy. Without hesitation, Pathfinder 1 moved forward, accelerating into the wormhole. The moment it passed through completely, the wormhole collapsed behind it. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then the tracking systems updated. Signal detected from Epsilon Eridani, announced the mission controller. Pathfinder 1 has successfully transitioned. They've broken the quarantine. Cheers erupted throughout the control room. Admiral Harper remained seated, but Olivia could see the emotion on his face. After 10 years of confinement, humanity had found its way back to the stars. This is just the beginning, Jack said quietly to Olivia as the celebration continued around them. The Council thought they could contain us. They were wrong. 2 weeks later, Pathfinder 1 returned with incredible news. Epsilon Eridani did indeed have a habitable planet, one rich with resources and suitable for immediate colonization. William's eyes shone with excitement as he presented the survey data. We're calling it New Eden, he said, and we request permission to begin colonization immediately. The Defense Council unanimously approved. Within 6 months, a fleet of 5 larger wormhole-capable ships had been constructed. The first human colony beyond the quarantine was established without the Galactic Council detecting a thing. As Olivia watched the colonial ships depart, carrying 2,000 settlers to New Eden, she felt a profound sense of pride. Humanity would not be confined. They would forge their own path among the stars, and someday, they would return to face the Council, not as supplicants but as equals. 50 years had passed since humanity established its first colony on New Eden. What began as a single settlement had blossomed into a network of 17 thriving colonies across what humans now called the Terran expanse. Each colony developed its own identity while remaining united under the banner of the newly formed Terran Alliance. The Pathfinder project had evolved beyond its original purpose. Newer ships were faster, more efficient, and capable of creating stable wormholes to increasingly distant star systems. Without the restrictions imposed by the Galactic Council, human innovation had accelerated at an unprecedented rate. Lisa Chen stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Horizon, watching as the blue-green planet grew larger on the main view screen. At 32, she was the youngest captain in the Alliance exploration fleet, known for her diplomatic skills as much as her command abilities. "Entering standard orbit, Captain," reported the navigator. "Life signs?" Lisa asked, turning to her. "Science officer. Abundant and definitely intelligent," he replied. "We're detecting cities along the northern continent and signs of early industrial development." Lisa nodded. "Prepare a first contact package. Standard protocol." This was the exciting part of her job. The Horizon specialized in finding new civilizations that had been overlooked or deliberately ignored by the Galactic Council. In the 50 years since breaking free from quarantine, humans had discovered that the Council practiced a form of deliberate neglect toward species they deemed unworthy of contact. The planet below was home to the Drothi, a humanoid species, with blue-tinted skin and remarkable cognitive abilities. According to stolen council records, they had been classified as too unstable for integration and placed on a monitoring list with minimal intervention allowed. The same label once applied to humans, the Drothi, detected the horizon almost immediately. Their response was cautious but curious, a single transmission asking who the visitors were and what they wanted. No threats, no weapons activated. Within hours, Lisa found herself leading a small delegation to the surface. They landed in an open field outside the largest Drothi city, where a welcoming committee waited. The Drothi were tall and slender, their movements graceful as they approached the human shuttle. "I am Vornal, speaker for the Drothi Collective," said the lead figure. Their language had already been analyzed and programmed into the translation devices the humans wore. "We have wondered when the Sky People would finally speak to us." Lisa stepped forward. "I am Captain Lisa Chen of the Terran Alliance vessel, Horizon. We come with peaceful intentions, to establish first contact and, if you wish, diplomatic relations." Vornal tilted his head. "Terran? You are not representatives of the Galactic Council?" "No," Lisa replied honestly. "We have our own path." The meeting lasted for hours as Lisa explained humanity's situation, their banishment, their breakthrough, and their subsequent expansion. She shared information about the Council's policy of selective engagement, revealing to the Drothi that they had been deliberately left behind while other species advanced with Council assistance. "They deemed us unworthy," Vornal said, his large eyes showing understanding. "Just as they judged your kind. We believe every species has the right to determine its own destiny," Lisa explained. "The Terran Alliance offers partnership, not subjugation. We share knowledge freely with those who join us." "And what do you gain from this sharing?" asked another Drothi official. "Diversity," Lisa answered. "Different perspectives, new ideas. Each species thinks differently, sees problems and solutions that others might miss. Together, we all become stronger." The Drothi took 3 days to consider the offer, during which Lisa and her crew were treated as honored guests. They were shown the achievements of Drothi civilization, their remarkable medical technology, their sustainable cities, their art and music. On the 4th day, Vornal announced the Drothi decision to join the Terran Alliance. It was a momentous occasion, broadcast to every Drothi settlement around the planet. "For generations we have watched the stars, knowing we were not alone but receiving no answer to our calls," Vornal said during the ceremony. "Now we understand why. Those who should have welcomed us chose to leave us behind. But in finding each other, perhaps both our peoples have found a better path." 6 months later, Lisa stood in the grand chamber of the Alliance Council on New Eden. The room was designed to be the opposite of the intimidating Galactic Council chamber she had seen in historical recordings. Here, all representatives sat at a circular table with equal positions. No species was elevated above others. Admiral William Grant, now in his 70s but still commanding respect, led the session. Beside him sat representatives from all 17 human colonies and 6 non-human species that had joined the Alliance. "The integration of Drothi medical science has already yielded remarkable results," Lisa reported to the Council. "Their understanding of neural pathways has helped us improve treatment for degenerative brain conditions by over 60%. "And what have they gained from us?" asked the representative from Mars Colony. "Our FTL technology has allowed them to establish their first off-world colony," Lisa replied, "and our agricultural methods have helped them solve a food shortage on their southern continent. This was the strength of the Alliance, mutual benefit through cooperation. Each new species brought unique perspectives and abilities. The Drothi's biological sciences complemented human engineering. The crystalline Novat, who joined the Alliance 3 years earlier, had provided insights into energy generation that revolutionized human power systems." As the council meeting continued, Lisa found herself reflecting on how different this approach was from the Galactic Council's hierarchical structure. The older council races hoarded their advanced technologies, sharing only obsolete versions with lesser species. They justified this as protecting the galactic order, preventing less mature civilizations from advancing too quickly. The Alliance rejected that philosophy. Knowledge was shared openly, allowing each member species to develop according to their own cultural values while benefiting from collective advancement. After the council session, Lisa walked with Admiral Grant through the memorial garden outside the chamber. At its center stood a simple stone monument inscribed with the names of those who had led the original Pathfinder mission. Captain Chen, the Admiral said, his voice showing his age but none of his authority diminished. The Horizon has been selected for a special mission. Sir, we've detected unusual energy readings from the Cygnus sector. Based on the signature, we believe it might be a previously unknown species with early wormhole capability. Lisa felt a surge of excitement. Another potential ally? Possibly. Or something else entirely. He handed her a datapad. These are the coordinates. Your ship leaves in 3 days. As Lisa reviewed the mission details, she couldn't help but smile. This was what the Alliance was about: exploration, discovery, and connection. While the Galactic Council remained ignorant of humanity's expansion, the Terran Alliance grew stronger with each new world and species that joined them. In the shadows of the galaxy, away from the Council's watchful eyes, a new interstellar community was forming, one built on mutual respect rather than the hierarchical structure that had dominated galactic politics for millennia. And one day, when they were ready, they would reveal themselves to the Council. Not as supplicants begging for acceptance, but as the foundation of a new galactic order. 120 years had passed since humanity broke free from the Council's quarantine. The Terran Alliance now spanned 36 worlds, including colonies established by the 6 non-human species that had joined the human-led coalition. The Alliance had grown carefully, expanding outward from Earth in a direction away from the core Council territories, minimizing the chances of discovery. But the inevitable finally happened on a warm spring day on Nova Terra, the Alliance's capital, world. The detection systems that ringed the outer edges of Alliance space triggered a silent alert. An unidentified ship had entered the system, a ship using the distinctive drive signature of Galactic Council technology. Maria Alvarez, Chancellor of the Terran Alliance, was immediately notified. At 58, she had served as Chancellor for just 2 years. Elected after a distinguished career in colonial development, she sat in her office in the Alliance Tower, the tallest structure in Nova Terra's capital city, as her advisors briefed her on the situation. "It's a scout ship," said Defense Director Paul Wilson, pointing to the holographic display hovering above the conference table. "Small crew, minimal weapons. Based on the signature, it's Vesperi design." "Have they detected us?" Maria asked. "Without question," replied Communications Director Sophia Lee. "They've been scanning the entire system. They've observed our orbital stations, the space elevator, the defense grid, everything." Maria nodded calmly. "Then there's no point in hiding. Open a communication channel." The advisors exchanged nervous glances. This moment had been discussed in theoretical terms for decades, the inevitable discovery by the Council that humanity had broken its quarantine. Now that it had arrived, there was a mixture of anxiety and relief in the room. The Vesperi scout ship responded to the hail immediately. On the view screen appeared the insectoid features of a Council overseer. The sight of the mantis-like alien brought back memories of old historical recordings for many in the room. "This is Drelzon, Overseer of Outer Territories for the Galactic Council," the Vesperi announced, his multiple arms moving in the formal gestures of his species. "I am investigating an unauthorized energy signature in this system. Identify yourselves immediately." Maria rose from her seat, standing tall before the camera. "I am Chancellor Maria Alvarez of the Terran Alliance. Welcome to Nova Terra, Overseer Drelzon." The Vesperi's compound eyes showed no emotion, but the sudden stillness of his limbs revealed his shock. "Terran, you claim to represent humans? Humans are quarantined in the Sol system by order of the Galactic Council." "That quarantine was imposed 120 years ago," Maria replied evenly. As you can see, circumstances have changed. The overseer's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. This is a severe treaty violation. How did you bypass the monitoring stations? How many settlements have you established outside your authorized boundaries? Maria smiled slightly. I invite you to dock at our orbital diplomatic center. These questions deserve proper discussion, not a hurried conversation over communication channels. There was a long pause as Drelzan considered the invitation. Finally, he responded, I will accept your invitation to assess the full extent of this treaty violation. Be advised that I will be reporting directly to the High Council. We would expect nothing less, Maria assured him. Docking instructions are being transmitted to your vessel now. After the communication ended, Maria turned to her advisors. Prepare the diplomatic center, full honors for a council overseer, and alert all Alliance worlds. It's time for implementation. Protocol Sunrise. Protocol Sunrise had been established decades ago for exactly this scenario. Throughout the 36 worlds of the Alliance, preparations began for potential council aggression. Defense systems moved to heightened alert status. The Alliance fleet repositioned to protect core worlds, but there were no evacuations, no panic. The Alliance had long prepared for this day. 6 hours later, Maria stood in the orbital diplomatic center as Drelzan's ship docked. The facility had been designed specifically with council species in mind, with environmental controls that could adjust to various atmospheric needs and gravity requirements. The Vesperi overseer emerged from his ship accompanied by 2 aides. His tall insectoid form moved with the precise dignity characteristic of his species. He stopped short upon entering the main hall, his compound eyes taking in the Alliance honor guard, a mixed formation of humans, Drothi, Novat, and representatives from the other Alliance species. Impossible, he whispered, the word barely audible. Maria stepped forward. Overseer Drelzan, on behalf of the Terran Alliance, I formally welcome you to Nova Terra. The diplomatic reception that followed was deliberately impressive. Through the transparent walls of the orbital center, the massive construction projects around Nova Terra were clearly visible. Space elevators connecting to floating cities in the atmosphere, shipyards building vessels of designs never before, seen by council eyes, research stations developing technologies that had evolved along entirely different paths than council science. The council made a mistake, Maria said simply as she led Drelzan on a tour of the facility. They judged humanity by what we were, not by what we could become. Now we offer you a choice. Acknowledge us as equals, or continue to pretend we don't exist. Either way, we will continue to grow. Drelzan's mandibles clicked softly. You must understand the seriousness of this situation, Chancellor Alvarez. The quarantine was a unanimous decision by the 17. It cannot simply be dismissed because humans found a way to circumvent it. The quarantine was based on fear and prejudice, Maria countered, and it was imposed without our consent. The Terran Alliance now includes 36 worlds, Overseer. 6 non-human species have joined us voluntarily. We have established trade, networks, scientific cooperation, and mutual defense agreements. We are not asking the Council for permission to exist. The Council will see this as a threat, Drelzan warned. That would be unfortunate, Maria replied. We have no hostile intentions toward the Council races. We simply chose a different path when the Council closed theirs to us. For 3 days, Drelzan remained at Nova Terra, gathering information about the Alliance. He was provided with limited but impressive access to Alliance achievements, medical breakthroughs, technological innovations, cultural exchanges between species. He observed the integrated society where humans and non-humans worked together as equals. On the 4th day, Drelzan prepared to depart. Before boarding his ship, he faced Maria one final time. My report to the Council will be thorough and accurate, he stated. I cannot predict their response. We understand, Maria said. But whatever their decision, know this. The Terran Alliance stands ready for either peaceful coexistence or to defend what we have built. The choice belongs to the Council. As Drelzan's ship departed Nova Terra, Maria returned to her office in the Alliance Tower. Her advisors waited anxiously for her assessment. How long do we have? asked Defense Director Wilson. Not long, Maria replied. The Council moves slowly, on minor matters, but this will shake their foundations. They believed they contained us, controlled our destiny. Finding out we've not only escaped but thrived without their permission will trigger a significant response. War? Asked one of the advisors nervously. Maria gazed out the window at the sprawling city below, where humans and aliens walked together in the afternoon sunlight. Possibly. But the Council faces a dilemma now. We're not the primitive species they banished a century ago. We have ships, weapons, and allies they know nothing about. A direct conflict would be costly for them. And we have another advantage, added Sophia Lee. Since the Council kept knowledge of us for most of the galaxy, we can now share our own narrative with other independent worlds. The story of a species unjustly quarantined who built something better outside Council control. Maria nodded thoughtfully. Prepare our diplomatic corps. The moment Drelzan's report reaches the Council, we begin our outreach to non-Council worlds. The game is changing, and we need to be ready for whatever comes next. Across Alliance space, ships moved into defensive formations. On Nova Terra and other core worlds, citizens continued their daily lives, aware of the historic moment but confident in the strength they had built together. The Galactic Council was about to discover that the species they had attempted to cage had not only escaped but had created something the Council had never managed in all its millennia of existence. A true community of equals among the stars. 200 years had passed since humanity's banishment from galactic society. The once monolithic Galactic Council had fractured, its authority diminished as more species chose to establish relations with the Terran Alliance despite the old quarantine orders. Overseer Drelzan's report had caused uproar when it reached the Council 80 years earlier. Some Council races had demanded immediate military action to bring humans back under control. Others recognized the political reality. Humanity had done what was thought impossible, and now commanded a sphere of influence that rivaled the Council's. The standoff that followed lasted for decades. Limited skirmishes occurred along border regions, but full-scale war never materialized. The Alliance proved too strong, its technology too advanced, its member species too loyal to one another. Eventually, an uneasy coexistence emerged, with diplomatic channels slowly opening between Alliance worlds and the more progressive Council members. Now, the galaxy had transformed. The Alliance had grown to encompass over 100 worlds, united not by conquest but by shared values of innovation, self-determination, and mutual defense. Human-derived technologies had spread throughout their sphere, creating prosperity that attracted even more species to their banner. Commander Ryan Phillips stood before the mirror in his quarters aboard the Alliance flagship Unity, adjusting the formal dress uniform he hadn't worn in years. At 35, he had the same strong features as his ancestor, Jack Harper, whose portrait hung in the Alliance Historical Museum on Nova Terra. 5 generations separated them, but the family resemblance was striking. "Commander, we're approaching Centauri Station," announced his executive officer over the comm system. "The Council representatives are waiting in the main chamber." "Thank you, Nala," Ryan replied. "I'll be on the bridge shortly." This day had been 2 centuries in the making. After years of negotiation, the Alliance and Council had agreed to formal peace talks. Ryan, as a direct descendant of Jack Harper, had been chosen as the Alliance's chief representative, a symbolic gesture acknowledging the history between humanity and the Council. Centauri Station had changed little in 2 centuries. The same grand architecture, the same hierarchical layout of sectors based on species status. But one significant change was immediately apparent when Ryan's shuttle docked. The human bay was no longer the smallest or farthest from the central hub. A new expanded docking area had been designated for Alliance vessels, with accommodations for the various species that made up the delegation. As Ryan led the Alliance representatives through the station corridors, he noted the mixed reactions from other species they passed. Some showed curiosity, others hostility, and many displayed uncertainty. The galaxy was changing, and not everyone welcomed that change. The Council chamber itself remained as imposing as it had appeared in the historical recordings Ryan had studied. The tiered seating rose around a central platform where speakers addressed the gathered representatives. But there were empty sections now, spaces once occupied by species that had left the Council to join the Alliance or declare independence. Council recognizes Commander Ryan Phillips of the Terran Alliance, announced the current High Counselor, a Thalassian whose water-filled environmental suit gleamed under the chamber lights. You may approach the speaker's platform. Ryan stepped forward, his Alliance delegation behind him. Among them stood representatives of 12 different species, including Drothi, Novat, and others who had prospered under Alliance partnership. Hi, fair Counselor, honored representatives of the Galactic Council, Ryan began, his voice steady. I stand before you to formally end 2 centuries of conflict and misunderstanding. The Alliance comes not seeking approval or forgiveness, but to establish a new relationship based on mutual respect. He paused, looking around the chamber where his ancestor had once stood alone. 200 years ago, this body judged humanity, unworthy of galactic society. You attempted to contain what you feared and could not control. That decision set in motion events that have reshaped the galaxy in ways none could have predicted. Murmurs spread through the chamber, but Ryan continued undeterred. The Council's time as the sole arbiter of galactic affairs has ended, he announced, clearly. The Terran Alliance proposes a new compact, one that respects the sovereignty of all spacefaring civilizations and establishes common rules of engagement that apply equally to all. The chamber erupted in a mixture of outrage and support. Some representatives pounded on their consoles in protest, while others nodded in agreement. The High Counselor raised his appendages for order, but the commotion continued for several minutes. In the observation gallery above the chamber floor, an elderly human watched with satisfaction. Jack Harper had been 92 when a breakthrough in Alliance medical technology extended his life far beyond normal human limits. Now, at 245, he was the oldest living human, kept alive through a combination of regenerative treatments and cybernetic enhancements. Jack had requested to witness this historic moment, though few in the chamber knew of his presence. He watched as his great-great-grandson faced the same council that had once condemned humanity, but this time on very different terms. When order was finally restored, the High Counselor addressed Ryan directly. Commander Phillips, your proposal represents a fundamental change to the galactic order that has maintained peace for millennia. What guarantees can the Alliance offer that your new compact will not lead to chaos? Ryan gestured to the diverse representatives standing with him. Look at the delegation before you. Species that the Council dismissed as primitive or unworthy have thrived under Alliance principles. We've achieved technological advancement without suppressing cultural diversity. We've expanded without conquest. Our guarantees are not words but demonstrated results. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Council conservatives argued that the old system had maintained order, while progressives pointed out that many worlds had already embraced Alliance methods with positive outcomes. Finally, an agreement was reached. A transitional period would begin immediately. A joint Council-Alliance commission would draft the new compact, with equal representation from both groups. Trade restrictions would be lifted, and diplomatic exchanges would commence between all willing parties. As the session ended, Ryan found himself approached by the Vesperi representative, a direct descendant of Zyrtok, who had pronounced humanity's banishment 2 centuries earlier. My ancestor believed he was protecting galactic stability by quarantining your species, the Vesperi said, mandibles moving softly. It appears we all have much to learn about the nature of true stability. Later, aboard the Unity, Ryan met privately with Jack Harper in his quarters. The ancient human sat in a specially designed chair that supported his fragile body, but his eyes remained sharp and alert. You did well, Jack told his descendant. Better than I could have done at your age. I had the advantage of not being alone, Ryan replied. That was their mistake from the beginning, believing they could isolate us. Jack nodded slowly. They feared what they couldn't control. In trying to contain humanity's potential, they forced us to find our own path, one that ultimately led not just to survival, but to the creation of something better than what they had built. As the Unity prepared to depart Centauri Station, Ryan stood at the viewport in the observation lounge, watching the massive structure slowly recede against the backdrop of stars. The old order was ending, and a new chapter in galactic history was beginning. The Council had meant to contain humanity's potential, fearing what they couldn't control. Instead, they had forced humans to find their own path, one that ultimately led not just to survival, but to the creation of a new galactic order based on principles the old Council had long forgotten. The species that had once been banished now offered a hand of friendship to their former judges, proving that the greatest empire wasn't built through conquest, but through vision, resilience, and the willingness to forge connections where others saw only threats.